This video is going to be extremely opinionated. So if you agree with me or think I'm wrong, let me know with a like or a dislike. Also, give me details in the comments. This is a discussion video after all. This is something I've seen pop up a few times in recent years, the idea that gamers are growing more and more entitled. And I am here today to explain my thoughts on the matter and say that the answer is yes. It's true. Sorta. It's complicated. So let's have that discussion. And by the way, speaking of strong opinions, I'd like to show you today's sponsor, Opinion Outpost. I've used them in the past when tight on spending money, so maybe while you're saving up for the Switch, you could take a few surveys, turn those into gift cards, and turn those gift cards into games. That's what I did, at least. All you have to do is answer questions and give your opinions on things. And a huge thank you to them for sponsoring this video. So, let's start with a definition. Entitlement. The belief that one is inherently deserving special privileges or special treatment. Egad, does that describe the general gaming sphere. And yes, I should clarify, I am talking about the vocal minorities here. Most people are cool people, but every group has their small group of loud individuals that pretty much make all the stereotypes exist. So, this small group of loud gamers, are they entitled? Well, it's complicated. Let's go through some examples, and you tell me. Mass Effect 3 had a lackluster ending. Gamers were so upset that they started petitions and yelled some more at BioWare until they updated the game to change the ending ever so slightly. Because how dare a group of creators create a game story that isn't what a few people wanted? Metroid Prime Federation Force, a Metroid spin-off game that upon its announcement also had many gamers in a tizzy, starting petitions to get this already mostly finished game cancelled. Really? Just because it's a spin-off game? And you don't want a spin-off game so nobody can have it? Like, it's not even a bad game, it's just different. Take Metroid out of the title and the same people would enjoy it. When Elite Dangerous updated from 2.0 to 2.1, they adjusted the gameplay to be more realistic and added a lot more story to the game, a whole new season. They offered this through DLC, and of course, many gamers hated this and believed it should be free. And to get back at the developers for daring not give them extra content for free, many people left excessively negative feedback on the DLC, and the forums began to fill with talk about these people being entitled and scaring off the new players. You also have people sending death threats to game developers over changes to, like, gun stats in games like Call of Duty. But not only Call of Duty, many developers from AAA to indie have expressed concern over the number of death threats they receive for making their game the way they want, and not what a particular gamer wants. And yes, I know that about 99% of death threats are empty, but they should still be taken seriously. There are also gamers who get legitimately upset that journalists and influencers get games earlier than them. Like, what? I mean, for example, I get sent indie games and Nintendo games sometimes a week before launch, so that I could start forming an opinion of it, start analyzing it, and let people know my thoughts on launch day or around launch day. That's how game reviews come out before or on launch day. And some people are upset by that? Really? I've seen on forums people like this defending themselves as saying that it's because while they have played all of the games some company made and supported this company the whole way, they don't get special treatment, while some journalist or person with a sizable following gets it even if they don't necessarily like the game. That upset person is literally the definition of entitled! Though, from what I can see, there are only a very, very few people like that. They just happen to be very loud. So what do you think now? Perhaps gamers are a bit too entitled. But here's the flip side. Maybe that's because they are supposed to be. Gamers, especially core gamers, are the game's consumers. They give money for a product, meaning they are now entitled to play said game and for an opinion of it. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. And if longtime fans of a franchise want a game to be a certain way, then if the developers make it that way, it will sell better. at least to the core fan base. So many feel that what they want should be the status quo. They are entitled to a good game because they are giving money in return for a good game. If the game ends up not being good, then they got gypped. As a consumer, you are entitled to the product that was advertised, to a product that respects your rights as a customer, and to a product that you subjectively enjoy. If you do not get these things, you are entitled to make the company aware of the fact that you feel they missed the mark, and that you were disappointed in their product. But you are not entitled to death threats, or petitions to remove a game from everyone's hands. Take No Man's Sky, for example. They advertised so much, and literally lied in their advertising. People gave them money for the product they were advertising. Thus, those people are entitled to the product they were advertising. And since those people didn't get the product they were advertising, they filed a class action lawsuit. This is probably the only time, at least that I'm aware of, that entitled gamers did something drastic, and it's actually justified and good. But petition signing, scaring away new players, and death threats are clearly in the minority. It's almost as if they are being exaggerated by gaming media. In fact, I'm sure that's exactly the case. By painting gamers in general as entitled, lets you, either a journalist or a game developer, wipe away all criticism as entitled whining. The easily influenced readers of gaming journalism sites like Kotaku and Polygon and such will agree with whatever they read, and these sites know this. So they paint the picture of all complaints about a game just being from entitled little snobs. Especially if that game is their current sponsor, or if they happen to know the game devs, which is often the case. Pay the complainers no mind, they are entitled gamers. Buy this game. It's great. Listen to us, not them. It may be a tactic they are using out of fear, because gaming journalism sites have been failing. Year after year, more and more of them close, and trust in them dwindles and dwindles. Why? Because these entitled gamers are making legitimately better reviews. Take the Devil May Cry reboot, for instance. Most long-term fans of DMC did not like the more generic direction the reboot was taking, and they voiced their concerns. Sites like Kotaku and Polygon wrote articles about gamer entitlement, instead of about the actual pros and cons of the Devil May Cry reboot. They also wrote a lot about privilege. The game is great, because it is. Don't listen to all these whiners. Meanwhile, these whiners on forums and on YouTube were making legitimate reviews of the game, some of them of essay length, pointing out all of its flaws and still praising it where it deserved praise. Most of these reviews were not one-sided. The one-sidedness is for the real journalists. These entitled gamers were even comparing subtle direction choices to the original series to show that the intent was to make a more generic game. This is why game journalists make the least amount of money of any journalists, because there are better writers that do it for free. These journalists even praise censorship, such as that in Fire Emblem, and called those who were upset over it entitled gamers. Entitled little perverts. Until a game that one of their friends made got censored. Then suddenly they're all against censorship. Whether you see games as a form of art or just a product, a form of media, many argue that after you purchase it, you are entitled to getting it in its original form, free from censorship. The director of the game chose to put things in said game. Why does someone completely unrelated get to decide what you can and cannot see of it? But, at the same time, while the people complaining of censorship are entitled to a non-changed version, those who wanted the changes are also entitled. For instance, if a game makes a change or censors something to appease some group of people, isn't that making them the entitled ones? Are they entitled to not being offended? Man, this is complicated. It's almost as if it's not a black and white situation. It's almost like it's a big gray area and there's not a necessarily right or wrong answer. Who'da thunk it? So are gamers entitled? Well, yes and no. In most cases, if they are, it's because they deserve to be, at least to an extent. No one is entitled to the point of deserving to give death threats, or to go out of their way to damage a company over lengthening a character's skirt. But at the same time, these gamers are the people paying for a product. If a developer continues to not listen to them, their product, their game, will start to fail. These are the people allowing the developers to keep their jobs and keep making games. So, a little bit of fan service, a little bit of pandering, goes a long way. Maybe they are entitled to have a small bit of say in how a game turns out. Though, many point to developers wanting to appeal to a wider audience as to why these entitled gamers are complaining in the first place. And they do have a right to be entitled to their own opinion and letting the developers know of that opinion. And in some cases, the whining entitled gamers are right. They have a good point. Sometimes appealing to a wider audience only hurts, such is the case with Tokyo Mirage Sessions. It's too Japanese to appeal to the mass Western market. And the large amount of censoring and game changes makes the fans of the genre not want to support you as much. Lose-lose! So if they didn't make these changes and appealed to their fans, the game would have done better. But at the same time, it may have to do with being pandered to too much, and given too many good things. Take MMO holiday deals, for example. Every single year they have to be better, or people will start complaining, singing the death of the MMO. People want their double XP, and they want it cheap. They are entitled to have a good time without putting the effort in. But at the same time, if an MMO gives the option to throw money at it to gain XP, that's also bad. Because the entitled gamer says, I spent all this time and work just to get here. And just to not be rewarded, they just threw money at the problem. I spent time and effort. I deserve the special treatment. It's kind of like the whole if you give a mouse a cookie thing. Remember that book as a kid? If you give a mouse a cookie, he'll ask for a glass of milk. If you give the mouse a glass of milk, he'll ask for a straw. Eventually, after being pandered to and given so many free things, the mouse feels entitled to free milk and free cookies. And the kid, perhaps the developer, gets worn out. But if they stop, the mouse will be upset and start complaining on forums and sending death threats, maybe even rioting in the streets. If you give a mouse a cookie might also be about the welfare state. Devs have pandered to fan bases in the past, perhaps too much, which encourages helplessness and ingratitude. It creates entitled gamers. So, if gamers are entitled, then it's partially game developers' fault. That's not to say that gamers are entitled, though, but that's also not to say that they aren't. This is a discussion video, so what do you think? Type furiously in the comments below, and hey, if you think gamers are a bit entitled, but that's mostly okay, hit the like button. If you think game devs are entirely to blame, gamers are perfect, little angels, it's not my fault, wah wah wah, hit dislike. And let me know more detail in the comments down below. Oh hey, and speaking of comments down below, speaking of your opinion, Opinion Outpost is pretty awesome. Surveys for money, excellent trade, link in the description. Until next time, I'm Loxton, and if you liked this discussion, here are more. Stay awesome. And you tell me. Mass Effect 3 had a lackluster ending. Gamers were so upset that they started petitions and yelled some more at BioWare until they updated the game to change the ending ever so slightly. Because how dare a group of creators create a game story that isn't what a few people wanted? Metroid Prime Federation Force, a Metroid spin-off game that upon its announcement also had many gamers in its Opinion Outpost. I've used them in the past when tight on spending money, so maybe while you're saving up for the Switch, you could take a few surveys, turn those into gift cards, and turn those gift cards into games. That's what I did, at least. All you have to do is answer questions and give your opinions on things. And a huge thank you to them for sponsoring this video. So, let's start with a definition. Entitlement. The belief that one is inherently deserving special privileges or special treatment. Egad, does that describe the general gaming sphere. And yes, I should clarify, I am talking about the vocal minorities here. Most people are cool people, but every group has their small group of loud individuals that pretty much make all the stereotypes exist. So, this small group of loud gamers, are they entitled? Well, it's complicated. Let's go through some examples. This video is going to be extremely opinionated, so if you agree with me or think I'm wrong, let me know with a like or a dislike. Also, give me details in the comments. This is a discussion video after all. This is something I've seen pop up a few times in recent years, the idea that gamers are growing more and more entitled. And I am here today to explain my thoughts on the matter, and say that the answer is yes. It's true! Sorta. It's complicated. So let's have that discussion. And by the way, speaking of strong opinions, I'd like to show you today's sponsor.